When life begins to shrink, it never warns you. It simply starts to contract at the edges, like an old photograph exposed to the sun for too long. And you keep telling yourself it's just a phase, an impression, a moment of weariness, until one morning you wake up and realize the world is no longer the same size as before, and everything that used to seem vast now seems narrow, as if someone had silently folded the horizon overnight while you slept, without asking your permission and without leaving a note. It doesn't happen dramatically. It happens in the smallest, most mundane moments that no one else notices. A coffee shop that no longer appeals to you, a street that once seemed vibrant and is now just a place you cross without thinking, a birthday that comes and goes without sparking a single flame within you. And this subtle decay is more frightening than any tragedy, because it's silent, it hides in routine, it comes disguised as normality, and you only realize it's stealing pieces of your inner landscape when you try to remember the last time you felt truly alive and your mind remains silent. There is a peculiar cruelty in this invisible contraction. It makes us feel responsible for our own decline, as if our decaying world were a personal failing and not an inevitable change of age, time, and weight. But the truth is that life often changes shape without consulting us. It grows in youth and contracts as we age, not because we have done anything wrong, but because the world we once inhabited is no longer the same, and the version of ourselves that fit into it has also subtly altered. Think about the first time you realized that certain dreams had expired without drama, without explosion, simply expired like a forgotten milk carton at the back of the refrigerator. You open the door, look at it, and know that time has done its work silently, efficiently, cruelly. And for a moment you wonder when exactly the expiration happened, because you swear that yesterday was still good and full of possibilities. That's how life shrinks, not with noise, but with small, invisible deaths of what we once believed would always be ours. You may remember times when you walked through your house and it seemed larger than your life could possibly fill. Now the same rooms seem strangely cramped, not because they've changed size, but because something within you has receded, like a tide that forgot to return. A house where laughter once echoed now sounds different, and even your own footsteps sound older, more cautious, more aware of the delicate architecture of your days. There's a peculiar loneliness in realizing that the world no longer unfolds with the same promise as before. You begin to see that some paths will never be traveled, some opportunities will never return, and some people who once seemed the center of your universe have become distant, almost ghosts, as if they belong to a parallel life that you vaguely remember, but to which you no longer have full access. And this realization is sharp. It wounds the silent recesses within you, those that no one else sees. Many people believe they are alone in experiencing this contraction, but they are not. This shrinking is one of the most shared human experiences, and yet one of the least verbalized, perhaps because admitting it aloud makes it painfully real. There is a silent community of souls who walk through their days carrying this same feeling, the perception that life has become more tenuous, more fragile, narrower, and that, within this narrowing, they too are becoming smaller, not physically, but inwardly, as if their identity were dissolving into background noise. Imagine someone sitting on the edge of their bed at night, unable to explain why everything seems a little faded. The colors, the conversations, the hopes. The person looks around the room and sees nothing wrong, nothing broken, nothing missing. Even so, everything seems different, and this difference weighs more deeply than any catastrophe, because it's not a single blow, but a slow erosion, the kind that steals unseen, the kind that makes you yearn for something you can't name. Perhaps you too have felt this pain that begins not in the body, but in the center of your being, where all your unspoken truths reside. A pain that whispers that time is running out for you to become the person you once promised yourself you would be. This whisper grows louder in quiet environments, on empty afternoons, in the mirror, when you glimpse someone you didn't realize you were becoming. And for a moment, you wonder if this shrinking is permanent, if this new tension surrounding your life is the final form it will take. But the human heart, even weary, still seeks explanations. It tries to understand how it got here, so it revisits memories, examines choices, revisits old paths, hoping to find the exact point where things began to crumble. Perhaps you remember a moment when you stopped dreaming intensely, or when responsibilities replaced your desires, or when you put someone else's needs above your own and forgot to return to yourself. These turning points are not grand. They are almost always commonplace, and yet they alter the architecture of a life. This shrinking also manifests itself in social spaces, in conversations where you feel less present, in encounters where your voice seems quieter, as if the world has slowly adjusted the volume and you are no longer the center of attention. It's a form of silent invisibility, one that doesn't hurt the body, but hurts the sense of belonging. And you begin to wonder if others also notice, or if it's a loneliness that only you carry with you. And yet, recognizing this feeling produces a powerful effect. You open a small window within the narrowing of your days, a window through which honesty can breathe. Recognizing that life has contracted is not weakness, but clarity. It allows you to trace the outline of your inner world with new precision and realize that what seems to shrink is often the beginning of a deeper vision, an introspection that may contain more truth than the expanding years ever did. If this resonated with you in any way, share your thoughts in the comments and consider subscribing so you can walk with us through these silent truths that so many feel, but so few dare to name. There are regrets that don't scream, that don't invade your life demanding attention. They simply sit silently beside you, like familiar visitors who know the essence of your soul better than you do yourself. They appear in moments when the world quiets down, in the evenings, in the tranquil mornings, in the pauses mid-sentence, when you find yourself remembering something you'd like to rewrite. And these regrets aren't dramatic. They are small, persistent presences that follow you from room to room and settle in the empty chair across from you at breakfast, watching you with an expression you can't escape. Some regrets stem from choices you made, believing they were harmless, like postponing a dream because life was busy, or distancing yourself from someone who needed you because you thought there would always be time later. And you keep reliving these moments in your head like an old film that trembles and wavers, as if trying to convince you that perhaps, if you watch it again, you'll discover a hidden detail that explains everything. But life doesn't give second chances. It gives memory, and memory has the power to amplify what once seemed small, transforming it into something heavy enough to shake your composure. Other regrets come from things you didn't do, words you never said, courage you postponed until it was too late. And these regrets have a particular weight because they have no form, nothing tangible to cling to. They live in the space of almost, of the unfinished, of you should have, and you could have, and they cling to you like dust that settles on untouched shelves, slowly, silently, and inevitably, until one day you perceive a layer of what could have been covering your entire inner world. Perhaps you remember a time when you faced an opportunity but walked away because it seemed safer not to take the risk. Maybe you passed by someone who needed you without realizing that it would be your last chance to show kindness. Or maybe you sacrificed a part of yourself in the name of harmony, believing it to be the noblest thing to do, only to discover years later that the silence you kept began to echo in your heart, and that echo became the language your regrets used to speak to you. There are regrets born from love, complex love, the love you gave too late, the love you denied, the love you offered to the wrong person, the love you failed to give yourself in the years when you needed it most. These are the regrets that hurt without bleeding, that surface when you hear a song from your youth, or see an old photograph hidden between the pages of a forgotten book, and for a moment feel the weight of what could have been if you had persisted a little longer or let go a little sooner. Some regrets come in the form of people who were once very important and who now live only in the memory of your best intentions. They appear in dreams or in sudden flashes of recognition, like when you pass by a place you visited together and your mind relives a brief moment of laughter, a gesture, a caress. And then comes the pain, that pain that reminds you that time has passed and taken with it the chance to fix things. It's curious how regrets don't age the same way we do. They remain sharp, vivid, and intact as we age around them, like a tree growing around a nail. The bark thickens, the seasons pass, but the nail remains cold and unchanging. And that's why regrets can be so painful, because they don't soften with time. They simply wait for quiet moments when we're unprepared to remind us that they're still here, still unresolved, still demanding our attention. There is also the regret of not valuing yourself when you should have, the regret of saying yes too often, the regret of settling for little for too long, the regret of letting your light go out for the comfort of others. And when you look back and see these decisions, you realize they weren't small. They shaped your life in ways you didn't understand at the time. They shaped your relationships, your self-esteem, your sense of what you believed you deserved. And these insights come late, usually in middle age, when the noise of youth begins to dissipate and a deeper truth emerges from the silence. And sometimes regret isn't about mistakes, but about how you abandoned your own heart because someone told you it was impractical, childish, or impossible to pursue what brought you joy. You folded your desires like old letters and stored them in drawers you rarely opened, telling yourself you'd return to them someday. But that day never came. And now the drawer has become a mausoleum for forgotten versions of who you once dreamed of being. However, amidst all this burden, there is something strangely human, something that connects us to one another, even in our solitude, because we all carry a gallery of regrets hidden behind our expressions. And the moment we admit ours, we find a fragile honesty that invites others to breathe a little easier, knowing they are not alone with their shadows. This shared vulnerability softens the edges of regret and allows it to become not a prison, but a mirror that reflects the cost of our choices and the depth of our longing for a new opportunity. If these words touched a part of your memory or awakened a feeling you thought was forgotten, I invite you to share a bit of your journey in the comments and subscribe so you can walk with us through these silent confessions that so many carry with them throughout the day. There comes a point in life when you begin to notice something unsettling, not sudden, not jarring, simply unsettling, the silent realization that you are slowly fading away, even while still alive. It doesn't begin with a tragedy. It begins in the smallest details. The way conversations pass around you without truly materializing, the way your presence in a room no longer changes the atmosphere, the way people greet you cordially, but without curiosity, as if they already knew everything about you and had silently stopped expecting any news. It often begins with a feeling of transparency, the impression that others look at you but don't truly see you, not like before when you overflowed with color, urgency, and promise. Now, there's a softness in the way glances pass over you, even when they meet yours, and you wonder when exactly you stopped being the central figure in your own life and became someone who observes more than participates, someone who listens more than speaks, someone who blends into the landscape like an old piece of furniture that's always been there and therefore no longer draws attention. There is a pain in this kind of disappearance, a pain that is both familiar and strange because it doesn't announce itself with emotion or tears. It seems more like an obscuring, a gradual extinguishing of the inner light, and it becomes noticeable when you realize that people rarely ask about your dreams, not out of lack of interest, but because they assume that these dreams no longer exist, and sometimes you fear that they might be right. You may have felt this during family gatherings, when your stories are shorter and your voice lower, not because you have nothing to say, but because you've become accustomed to conserving energy, keeping your thoughts to yourself where they feel safer, or during conversations where you smile, nod, and play your part, but internally feel that your presence occupies less space than before and begin to wonder if it is you who is withdrawing or if it is the world that is drifting away. There's a strange moment when the mirror becomes your only honest witness. You look at your reflection, not seeking beauty or flaws, but rather the person you once were, trying to find the spark that shone even on the darkest days. But sometimes the mirror seems like a window to another person, someone familiar yet altered, someone who carries your memories, but not your intensity. And you wonder when exactly your face began to resemble silence. This also happens in routines, those that repeat themselves without asking your permission, the morning rituals that no longer seem like beginnings, but obligations, the nights that arrive with their heavy familiarity, the days that blend into one another so perfectly that, if someone asked you what you did last week, you would have difficulty remembering anything significant. It is in these repetitive cycles that disappearance becomes most visible, because when life stops surprising you, it also stops seeing you. You may remember the years when your identity was clear, defined, and full of purpose, when people trusted you, when your choices shaped the atmosphere of your home, when your laughter filled the spaces in such a way that it left echoes. Now, your laughter still exists, but it seems quieter, as if the environment absorbs it instead of reflecting it. Some people begin to fade emotionally long before anyone notices, including a parent who dedicated decades to others until there was nothing left in their inner reserve. A partner who slowly became the constant figure holding everything together while their own needs evaporated. Someone who abandoned their passions because life demanded responsibility instead of curiosity. And little by little, the world forgot to ask who they were beyond what they offered. It's not always others who make you invisible. Sometimes it's your own exhaustion, your own fear of taking up space, your own silent belief that you no longer have the right to want, change, or experience new things. And this belief takes root within you until defending yourself becomes almost unsettling, as if reclaiming your voice would destabilize the delicate balance you've spent years maintaining. There is also the social invisibility that comes with age, the way opportunities diminish, how attention turns to the young, how experience is valued and discarded at the same time. People may respect your years but rarely ask what they have taught you. They may admire your resilience, but rarely imagine that you still carry longing and passion. And this disconnection deepens the feeling of fading, as if the world only recognizes your past and not your present. And yet, behind all this fading, there is an undeniable truth. Disappearance often begins not because you are unloved or have been forgotten, but because you have learned to diminish yourself to make life easier for others and harder for your own heart. You have learned to silence parts of yourself that once roared. You have learned to adapt so well that you have lost sight of the original form of your soul. But even in this invisibility, there is a flame waiting, a reminder of who you were, the intensity, the courage, the stubborn hope, the yearning to live fully. These parts don't die, they recede and wait for you to remember them. If any part of this seemed familiar to you or touched on something you hadn't named before, I invite you to express your thoughts in the comments and subscribe so you can continue walking with us through these shared and unspoken truths of the inner life. There is a specific kind of pain that doesn't ask permission to enter your life. It simply appears like a guest who already knows where the light switches are. Simone Weil understood this with a clarity that most people spend their lives trying to avoid. She believed that suffering, when consciously confronted, could dispel illusions, just as fire dissipates impurities from metal. But she never romanticized this process. She knew it was brutal. She knew it tore the soul apart with a precision that left no room for hiding. And yet, she saw in this tearing apart a strange form of truth, a truth that resides only in the places we most strive not to look. When suffering comes into your life, it rarely arrives as a single catastrophe. More often, it comes in small, silent moments. The wound you ignore, the loneliness you pretend doesn't matter, the disappointment you swallow until it becomes part of your bloodstream, the missed opportunities you try not to think about until your chest tightens without warning, and you don't know if it's sadness, a memory, or simply the weight of everything you never said aloud. This gradual accumulation becomes an internal pressure and, at some point, demands to be faced with the same intensity it demands of you. Simone Weil believed that suffering reveals the most honest parts of a person, not because it makes them greater, but because it removes everything that is superficial. She said that pain has the power to propel us out of the world of distractions and into a confrontation with what is real. Perhaps you have already felt this on nights when you sat alone with your thoughts and realized there was nowhere left to run. The distractions that once worked no longer soothe. The noise of the world falls silent. And suddenly, the only voice you hear is your inner voice, asking questions you have avoided for years. Think of times when pain made you pay attention in a way that nothing else could. Perhaps you lost someone, and grief forced you to confront your own fragility. Perhaps you carried a deep sadness that taught you the strength of your resilience. Or perhaps you experienced a disappointment that shattered a belief you thought was essential. And afterward, you discovered a different kind of strength, not loud, not triumphant, a silent strength born from the simple fact that you continued to breathe, even when breathing hurt. Pain tends to reveal truths we cannot learn through comfort. It shows the limits of our patience, the depth of our longing, the places in our hearts we didn't even know still hurt, and the parts of ourselves we abandoned without realizing it. And however difficult it may seem, you can recognize a moment in your life when suffering made you more honest, more aware, more alive, even if you didn't want it to be. Because suffering has a strange ability to illuminate the path we have been blindly treading. There's an old idea that human beings learn more from loss than from gain, and while that sounds harsh, there's undeniably some truth to it. Think about how clearly you remember the moments that hurt you, compared to those that brought you joy. Think about how much you grew after a disappointment, compared to how little you changed after a success. Think about how much of who you are today was shaped not by joy, but by the things you were forced to overcome. Simone Weil believed that this confrontation with suffering creates an empty space in the soul, not an emptiness of despair, but a space of receptivity, a space where something meaningful can finally enter. But for most of us, this empty space seems terrifying. We spend years filling it with noise, work, distractions, relationships, objects, anything to avoid hearing the inner echo. However, the echo continues, and sometimes it is the echo itself that saves us, because it shows us that there is still a depth within us that we have not forgotten. You may remember a time when you wondered why this pain, why now, why me? And yet, behind those questions, there was a quieter one, a question you perhaps didn't want to face. What is this pain trying to show me? And although it seems contradictory, suffering often reveals the truth we hide from ourselves. Whether it's the truth that something in our lives needs to change, or that a part of us needs to be rescued, or that we have been carrying more than any human heart should ever bear. There are people who discover who they truly are in moments of quietude, forced by pain. Someone who has always appeared strong may find themselves admitting their vulnerability. Someone who has spent their life pleasing others may finally realize they have the right to want something for themselves. Someone who has hidden their emotions behind a wall may one day allow that wall to break down enough for a true feeling to escape. And these transformations are rarely dramatic. They unfold silently, slowly, in the privacy of the inner world, where no one else sees, but where everything changes. Pain also has the power to connect us with others, even when we think it isolates us. The stories we carry, the wounds we try to hide, the silent battles we fight, all of this creates invisible bonds between us and the people who have lived through similar nights of anguish. And it is often through these shared sufferings that we find our deepest forms of empathy. Not the superficial kind, but the kind that stays by the other person's side in their darkness, without trying to quickly turn on the light. And in this strange and silent landscape of suffering, there is a single realization that many people unexpectedly arrive at. The realization that pain doesn't diminish the soul, it exposes it, erases the masks, the performances, the roles, the expectations, and leaves you with the raw, unfiltered self that rarely shows itself in the light of ordinary days. And when you find this self, even amidst tears, something within you awakens, something that was waiting for you to stop running away long enough to be seen. If anything in these words stirred a memory or a quiet place within you, I invite you to share your reflections in the comments and subscribe so we can continue exploring these truths together in this space of gentle honesty and shared humanity. There comes a point in life when your body begins to speak a language you never learned, a language of stiffness in the morning and slower steps at night, a language of joints that whisper its complaints and skin that bears the gentle mark of each passing year. And you stand there, realizing that your body has its own clock, one that refuses to lie or negotiate. And while you accept these changes with quiet resilience, there's another voice inside you that refuses to age in the same way. It's the voice of your inner youth, the part of you that still burns with desires you rarely express aloud, the part that still wants to start something new, not finish something old, the part that feels 19 at heart, even when your knees feel 70. It's a strange contradiction to live with this duality, to feel an inner fire coexisting with an external slowdown. And you begin to understand why some people look out the window with a distant expression, not of sadness, but of the shock of carrying two timelines within the same body. You can perceive this contrast in the smallest moments, like when a memory from your early 20s flashes through your mind with such clarity that you physically feel as if time has been bent in half for an instant, and then the present returns with force, reminding you that many years separate who you were from who you have become, or when you climb the stairs and your breathing becomes faster than before, and yet your heart responds to the music, to the beauty, to the possibilities with the same intense pulse as always. There is something almost sacred in this tension between the aging body and the young soul. Think of a candle that burns steadily even as the wax melts. It is not the flame that ages, but the structure that sustains it. In this analogy, perhaps you understand why sometimes we feel younger on the inside than life expects us to feel. The flame remains intact. The structure simply changes shape. People often talk about aging as if it were a single event, but the truth is that aging is a series of small farewells. The farewell to the strength you once had, the farewell to the speed you enjoyed, the farewell to the version of yourself that inhabited a body capable of anything. And each of these farewells is felt more deeply than you admit, even to yourself, because they remind you of something you don't want to acknowledge. Life goes on, whether you feel ready or not. And yet, as the body slows down, the inner world becomes more intense, more vibrant, more laden with meaning. You begin to notice things your younger self never paid attention to. The tenderness in a simple gesture, the quiet beauty of an ordinary day, the way a certain light at the end of the afternoon fills you with a strange longing. These things don't belong to youth. They belong to maturity, to a soul that has learned to see what previously went unnoticed. There are moments when you can touch your own face and be surprised by the softness of your skin, as if your body were telling the story of your life without you asking. First lines that hold memories, laughter, sadness, perseverance, choices, bones that carry decades of weight, shoulders that remember the burdens you chose to hide from others. And yet, when you close your eyes, none of these signs change the fire within you, the fire that refuses to go out, even when everything around you says it should. This is one of the paradoxes that most people don't talk about. The strange loneliness of feeling young on the inside, while everyone around you treats you as if your inner world has slowed down along with your body. You might notice how people stop asking about your dreams, how they assume certain desires no longer apply to you, how they look at your age and think it tells the whole story, when in reality it only tells the outer chapter. It's curious how society tends to believe that longing belongs to the young, as if older hearts were incapable of wanting more, wanting differently, wanting more deeply. But the opposite is true. The older the soul, the stronger the longing, because it knows what it has lost, knows what has survived, knows the taste of time. And so desire becomes more meaningful, more intimate, more precise, not a noisy fire, but a concentrated flame. There may be mornings when you feel the weight of age in your bones, and yet, later that same day, something stirs within you, a small spark, a forgotten curiosity, a moment of inspiration, and it reminds you that your soul has not surrendered to the calendar. You may find yourself making plans, dreaming, revisiting old passions, imagining new beginnings, and you feel a silent rebellion rising within you, a refusal to let your body dictate the boundaries of your inner life. And the truth is that this inner youthfulness is a form of wisdom, a sign that your soul hasn't aged in the same way your body has. It has adapted, transformed, deepened, but hasn't lost its brilliance. You carry decades of stories within you, and yet the part of you that hopes, loves, desires, and imagines remains strangely untouched, as if time is allowed to age the surface, but not the core. If these words touched something real within you, if you felt your own inner flame ignite as you read, I invite you to share a thought in the comments and subscribe so we can continue exploring these delicate truths that live silently within each of us. There is a specific type of mistake that almost no one notices while it's happening because it disguises itself as responsibility, kindness, and practicality, convincing you that you're doing the right thing, even as it slowly destroys the deepest parts of who you are. This mistake is subtle, gentle, almost polite. It enters your life silently through small decisions, and before you know it, you're living a life that doesn't fully belong to you. For many people, this mistake begins early, the moment they decide their dreams can wait because someone needs them more, because the timing isn't right, or because wanting something for themselves seems selfish. They think they'll return to their desires later, when things calm down, when life allows, when they're finally ready. But life rarely gives back what we postpone, and without realizing it, we begin to shape our days around the expectations of others, until the outline of our own identity fades. You might remember a younger version of yourself who had plans, a direction, ideas too brilliant to ignore. Perhaps you wanted to study something that fascinated you, but someone convinced you to choose the safer path. Perhaps you wanted to take a risk, move to another place, change careers, try something unknown, But you let fear or duty silence that impulse, telling yourself that stability mattered more than possibility. And although you moved forward with strength and dignity, there was a part of you that remained suspended in time, waiting for permission to exist again. Another manifestation of this unnoticed mistake is the habit of saying yes when everything inside you whispers no. At first, this doesn't seem dangerous. After all, what harm can an extra responsibility cause? What harm can a small sacrifice bring? But one sacrifice becomes two, and two become 10. Soon, your life is filled with the weight of commitments that don't nourish you, leaving you exhausted in a way that not even sleep can cure. And the saddest part is that no one around you notices how much of yourself you've given up, because you've always been capable, always reliable, always willing. There is also the mistake of diminishing yourself to make others feel comfortable. The moments when you minimize your abilities, your opinions, your needs, because you are afraid of conflict, judgment, or disappointing someone you care about. Over time, this diminishment becomes a habit until you forget the feeling of naturally occupying space. You no longer ask for what you want, you no longer express what you truly feel, you adapt to avoid friction, and slowly, you disappear from your own narrative, not because the world expelled you, but because you distanced yourself without realizing the price. One of the most painful consequences of this unnoticed mistake is the growing distance between who you are and who you intended to become. You feel it in moments of quiet, when you reflect on the past and wonder how your life ended up so far from the path you once imagined. There is a subtle sadness in recognizing this, not a resounding sadness, but a slow pain that lingers in the background of your days. The feeling that something essential slipped away without you realizing it. Think about how many times you convinced yourself that you could endure just a little longer, that your needs could be postponed for a while longer, that your desires could be silenced just one more time. And these small negotiations accumulate inside you like layers of dust until one day you look at your life and feel the weight of everything you didn't choose. Every time you prioritized survival over meaning, every time you allowed fear to disguise itself as caution. There are people who spend decades carrying this invisible mistake and only realize it when their children grow up. Relationships settle into routine, responsibilities diminish, and finally, they have a moment to breathe. At that instant, they feel something unexpected, an emptiness, a longing, an echo of the self they left behind. And they wonder if there is still time to recover what was lost. But the truth is that this very awareness is the beginning of a return, a slow and gentle return to the person you should always have been. You may have felt this awakening at strange moments, perhaps while washing dishes, sitting alone in the car, or waking up earlier than usual with an indefinable feeling. The feeling that something inside you yearns for attention, for expression, for a chance to exist again. And this desire is neither childish nor foolish. It is the small ember remaining of your inner truth, still shining beneath the ashes of all the compromises you have made. Simone Weil believed that most human suffering stems from abandoning the essential in favor of the urgent, and that is precisely the nature of this unnoticed error. We allow the noise of life to drown out the silent voice of our soul, and in doing so, we lose not only ourselves, but also the depth that gives meaning to everything we touch. And yet, it's never too late to acknowledge that mistake, because awareness transforms the landscape around you the moment you realize the ways in which you've let yourself down. You also see the path that leads you back, not through drastic changes, but through small acts of self-recovery, expressing an honest feeling, pursuing a forgotten interest, listening to your own inner voice, even when it whispers instead of shouting. If these words resonated with you, if you recognized even a small part of yourself in these hidden commitments, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe so we can continue walking together through these silent awakenings that shape the soul in ways no one else can see. There is a peculiar silence that grows heavier with age, a silence that once seemed peaceful but now is laden with questions you never wanted to ask and answers that never come. It's not the silence of an empty room or the stillness of the early morning. It's a deeper silence, the kind of silence that resides within the chest, the kind of silence that lingers after a prayer, a hope, a plea. And it is this silence that begins to trouble you in ways it never did when you were younger. Because when you were young, you believed that time would eventually bring clarity, But now you realize that clarity doesn't always come, and the very act of waiting becomes a kind of anguish. As the years go by, this silence begins to take on a different presence. It becomes something you notice in moments you previously ignored, when you wake up in the middle of the night and feel the weight of your own thoughts pressing down on you. When you sit next to someone you love and feel a distance that has nothing to do with physical space. When you leave home and the world seems strangely indifferent to your existence. And it is in these moments that you begin to wonder if this silence is a form of abandonment or a message you haven't yet learned to interpret. Simone Weil believed that the silence of something greater is not a punishment, but an invitation, a difficult and often painful invitation to confront what is most real within us. She wrote about this with an almost trembling honesty, acknowledging that silence can feel like a void, even when it forces the soul to grow in directions it would never have chosen. And her insight carries a truth you may have already felt without ever naming it. Silence expands the heart in the same way that darkness expands vision, teaching it to perceive what previously went unnoticed. Think about the times you waited for something, a sign, a guarantee, a moment of clarity, and instead received nothing but the echo of your own breath. You may have interpreted this emptiness as rejection, as if something beyond you had moved away. But what if this emptiness wasn't absence, but space? Space for you to confront what you've been avoiding, space for you to see the fears you hide, space for you to discover strengths that only reveal themselves when all external voices are silent. There is a particular pain in believing that you are not heard, in believing that your questions dissipate into thin air without reaching anything or anyone. And as we age, this feeling intensifies, because the inner world becomes more filled with memories, regrets, and perceptions that sharpen with the passing years. You can look back and see moments when you felt welcomed, guided, understood, and now you find yourself in a phase of life where the silence seems colder, emptier, more relentless. And yet, there's a strange paradox in this, because the very silence that seems unbearable is often precisely what awakens a deeper awareness within you. Think of an artist who needs stillness before creating, or a seed that needs darkness to germinate, or a tide that needs to recede to return with full force. Your soul goes through similar cycles even when you don't want it to. The silence you feel now may not be a denial, but a preparation. One of the most unsettling discoveries of adulthood is realizing that certainty becomes increasingly rare as the years go by. We begin to notice that life doesn't explain itself in the way we once expected, and the silence around us begins to resemble a mirror, reflecting our own unspoken truths, our fears about time running out, our yearning for purpose, our desire to be seen in a world that often ignores us. And when these reflections appear, we may wish for a comforting voice to drown them out. But sometimes, silence is the only voice capable of revealing what we truly need to see. It's important to understand that feeling this silence is not a sign of weakness or failure, but rather of depth. People who feel deeply are those who perceive when the world quiets down. They are those who feel the transition between presence and absence, between fullness and emptiness. They are those who look at the night sky and realize that the silence within them reflects the immensity above. And this recognition is both terrifying and strangely intimate. There are times when this silence becomes oppressive, when you sit alone at home and feel the weight of each unanswered question, when you remember the person you were and wonder where they went, when you feel the fragility of life with a clarity for which no one prepared you. And yet, it is in these fragile moments that something within you begins to awaken a small but persistent awareness that the silence is asking for your attention, not to torment you, but to bring you back to yourself. Sometimes, the silence you feel is simply the space between who you were and who you are becoming, and transitions always seem like an abandonment before revealing themselves as transformation. It's the same feeling a chrysalis must have when everything familiar dissolves, the same feeling a beach must have when the tide recedes, leaving it exposed and strangely empty. You may not realize it now, but emptiness often precedes revelation, just as darkness precedes dawn. If these words have touched something silent and inexpressible within you, I invite you to share your reflections in the comments and to subscribe so that you can continue exploring these inner landscapes with us in a space where your voice and your presence truly matter. There is a truth that almost no one dares to say aloud because it is cutting, disturbing, and cuts through all the comforting narratives we tell ourselves. Yet this truth has a strange power to liberate the soul when we finally face it. The truth is that no one will come to rescue you. Not the people you waited for, not the opportunities you hoped would return, not the versions of yourself you thought you could recover. And when this realization arrives, it often feels like a collapse, a moment when the ground you trusted disappears and you find yourself face to face with the weight of your own life. For years, you may have nurtured the silent belief that relief would one day arrive, that something or someone would intervene at the last moment with the missing answer, the missing courage, the missing guidance, as if a part of you were on pause, waiting for an external force to grant permission for the next chapter. And perhaps you didn't voice this belief aloud, but you felt it in the way you postponed your desires, in the way you adjusted your expectations, in the way you allowed life to happen to you, instead of happening through you. There's a peculiar pain in realizing that no one else holds the key to your change, not because people don't love you, but because they're fighting their own battles, carrying their own regrets, tending to their own loneliness. Often, people are so caught up in their own lives that they can't enter yours with the clarity you hoped for. And that's not cruelty, it's simply human nature. When you truly understand this, a silent shift begins within you, a shift that feels both like a loss and an awakening. You can look back and realize how many times you waited for someone to understand what you couldn't explain, waited for someone to notice the weight behind your smile, waited for an opportunity to call your name, waited for a moment that never came. And in that waiting, you slowly disconnected from your own autonomy, as if the course of your life belonged to forces beyond your reach. And when the truth finally reveals itself, that no one will come, you may feel abandoned at first, but behind that abandonment lies an unexpected freedom. This freedom is subtle. It begins as a murmur, a whisper that says, if no one comes, you are no longer trapped in waiting. You are not obliged to remain in the same emotional place, yearning for rescue. You don't need to continue carrying expectations that never served you. You are not condemned to live in the shadow of postponed decisions. Suddenly, the path that once seemed closed begins to open, not because circumstances have changed, but because you have begun to see yourself differently. There is something profoundly human in this transformation. In the moment you realize that your life is no longer a reaction to what others offer or deny, but something you can shape with your own hands and your own intention. This doesn't mean the journey becomes easy, but rather that it becomes yours. The weight of the journey becomes real, as does the possibility of reinventing a part of yourself you thought you had lost, the possibility of rescuing dreams you buried because they seemed impractical, the possibility of creating a new chapter without asking permission from the past. Consider how many people come to this conclusion late in life, sometimes in their 50s, 60s, or 70s, when the world expects them to quietly retreat into routine. Yet this is often the age when the soul begins to yearn for authenticity more intensely than ever, when the desire to stop waiting and start choosing becomes too powerful a force to ignore. Because something happens when you live long enough. You clearly realize that time is not infinite, and this clarity can both paralyze and awaken. Simone Weil understood that truth without gentleness is unbearable, but truth without courage is useless. She believed that a soul is only liberated when it stops expecting external rescue and begins to cultivate inner awareness. That awareness which doesn't question what someone should do for me, but rather what is asked of me now, at this moment, at this stage of my life. And this question, though simple, contains a depth capable of changing the trajectory of your entire existence, once you are honest with yourself. There's a moment in many people's lives when a small decision marks the beginning of a turnaround. The decision to stop waiting for validation, to stop waiting for the perfect moment, to stop waiting for someone to completely understand you. This kind of inner turning point isn't announced with fireworks. It arrives silently, often in a moment of exhaustion, a moment of loneliness, a moment of frustration. And yet it becomes a seed that begins to sprout against the hardened ground of everything you considered permanent. And when that seed begins to germinate, even minimally, something extraordinary happens. You feel a change in your breathing, a slow but undeniable sensation that you are recovering something that once belonged to you. Your voice, your direction, your worth, your capacity for choice. You realize that strength is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to surrender your identity to it. And this realization, though difficult, is the gateway to a new kind of freedom, a freedom shaped not by rescue, but by self-knowledge. If these words have awakened something true within you, if you felt, even for a moment, the silent awakening of your own strength, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe so that we can continue exploring these deep inner movements together, because your voice, your presence, and your story matter much more than you have ever been taught to believe. There comes a moment, near the end of every long inner journey, when the noise within you finally quiets down, not because the world has become kinder or easier, but because something within you has settled into a deeper understanding, a more serene truth, a gentler rhythm. And part 9 resides in that delicate space, the moment when you realize that transformation doesn't always come from grand gestures, but from a small, almost imperceptible shift in the soul, an alteration so subtle that others may never notice it, yet powerful enough to change the entire direction of your inner life. This transformation often begins with a breath, a simple breath, taken without urgency or fear, a breath that feels like the first honest breath you've taken in years. And in that breath you feel something loosening, something being released, as if the weight you've carried for so long finally agrees to give a little, even if only by a few centimeters. And those centimeters are enough because change rarely begins with certainty. It begins with willingness. The willingness to see yourself not as someone broken, behind, or lost, but as someone who is awakening. Perhaps you arrived at this point after a lifetime carrying responsibilities that shaped you more than you imagined. Perhaps you arrived after confronting regrets that remained by your side like silent companions. Perhaps you arrived here through pain, silence, the slow erosion of parts of yourself you didn't even realize were disappearing. Or perhaps you arrived simply because the truth finally became stronger than your fear. Whatever path brought you to this moment, what matters is that you are here, fully present, with your own depth and your own possibilities. This small shift in the soul isn't a dramatic transformation, but rather a subtle renewal. It's you choosing to breathe intentionally for the first time in a long time. It's you deciding you no longer want to disappear from your own life. It's you allowing yourself to desire something again, to feel something again, to remember that your story hasn't ended simply because time has passed. It's you understanding that even the quietest change can redirect the entire current of your existence. There is a certain beauty in reaching this stage of life and realizing that the world can no longer define you, that the expectations of others have lost their power, that the judgments you once feared have become small and insignificant compared to the truth you carry within yourself. That is the beauty of maturity. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of clarity, the silent audacity to look into your own heart with honesty and compassion and realize that it still has more to say, more to feel, more to offer. And in this recognition, something sacred happens. You begin to see your own life not as a collection of failures or missed opportunities, but as a landscape shaped by perseverance, by tenderness, by the simple fact that you persevered even when you didn't know how. As the flame of youth faded in the constant glow of experience, you discovered a resilience you previously ignored, and now this resilience becomes your companion, your guide, your silent source of dignity. This final stage of the journey isn't about becoming someone new, but rather about finally becoming someone genuine, someone who doesn't apologize for wanting peace, for wanting meaning, for wanting connection, someone who knows the value of silence without being dominated by it, someone who has traversed life's stagnant moments and emerged with a deeper appreciation for the moments that still expand the heart. You may feel older, but you are also more lucid, stronger, more honest, more present than the person you were before. There is a special kind of gratitude that emerges in these later chapters. Gratitude not for perfection, but for survival, not for certainty, but for awareness, not for what life has given, but for what life has revealed. This gratitude remains silently in your heart like a warm ember, reminding you that every breath is still yours, every choice is still yours, every remaining day carries the possibility of beauty, even if it manifests itself in small and delicate forms. And as you remain in this moment, in this gentle inner transformation, you can feel a peace that doesn't erase the past, but welcomes it as part of your transformation process. a peace that comes from the awareness that you can stop running away, stop pretending, stop diminishing yourself. You can simply be here, in the fullness of who you are now, and let life expand within you in ways that weren't possible when you were busy pleasing, surviving, or waiting. Thank you for journeying through these reflections with such openness and heart. Thank you for allowing these words to reach you wherever you are. Thank you for staying until this last breath of this journey. If this has touched you, if you felt understood, if something within you has softened or awakened, I invite you to continue with me. Take a moment to click on the next video that will appear on your screen, and let's continue exploring together the silent and beautiful depths of the human soul. Your presence here matters more than you can imagine, and I am grateful for sharing this time with you.